Hello everyone and welcome. I haven't actually given you guys my full thoughts about the game anywhere else, so I'm going to do that now. And also, just in case you found this video somewhere else and you're wondering to yourself, is Magia Record a good mobile game? What even is Magia Record? Is it worth getting into? I will give you a recommendation, but first I will need to mention that I will be comparing this game mostly to other mobile games that I've played in the past. For example, I've played pretty much every single big mobile game that is out there and a few smaller ones as well. So just to start the list, I've played Fake Run Order, Azure Lane, Abyss Horizon, Girls Frontline, Arknight, Sinnoh Alice, and a whole bunch of others, Brave Exvius, the Dissidia, Omnia, Opria, or whatever it's called, a whole bunch of them, at least 20 plus mobile games that I've played in the past for at least a month each, Fake Run Order even for over 3 years, and I hated it. And I'm going to be basically comparing it to the general idea that I have of what a modern mobile game should be like. And I also need to mention that I play every single game completely free to play. I've never spent even a single cent on a mobile game in like 4 or 5 years even. So we're going to start out with just basically going over a very basic explanation for what Magia Record is, and I was going to very quickly show you a very simple battle just so you get the idea of what Magia Record is like. It's basically an RPG game, as you would expect from most mobile game, where you fight enemies, and in this case you fight enemies in a turn-based fashion. But the important bit in this game is that you are standing on a grid and your opponents are standing on a grid as well. And there are different types of discs. The blue disc generates MP to use for special attack. The yellow discs is useless. The purple disc is the blast disc, which is the only really good disc. And what that disc does is it does area of effect damage, and it's the only disc that can hit multiple targets at once. And you can decide which enemy gets hit by which disc. So if I did something like this, for example, it will remember what I targeted and will switch the targets accordingly. And so you take your turn, you attack your enemies, and then the enemies get a turn and they attack you, and it basically is like a back and forth like that until you hopefully win. So it is a very standard mobile game as you would expect. I don't think I've played, like I said, I've played very many mobile games out there. I don't think there was a single mobile game out there that I would say has good enough gameplay to stand completely on its own. When we were talking about mobile games, we're just talking about the gameplay as one part of a bigger machine, unlike in other games, for example, where I would say, oh, the gameplay in this and that game is so good that I would just keep playing it forever, like Doom, for example. Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal are an example of that. But with mobile game, like I said, we need to talk about the bigger picture with this game. So as you might notice on my discs on the bottom now, also first off, all your characters have their own disc set, as you would expect from something like Fake Run Order, and then when the turn starts, all of those characters are thrown into a pool, and then from that pool 5 random discs are drawn. But unlike Fake Run Order, there is no card counting, there is no 3-turn count where you know that over those 3 turns you will draw all your discs. That doesn't exist in this game, it's completely random, and that's mostly because and that's another important aspect, the group size that you go into battle with can be very different from player to player. You can have up to 5 characters enter a battle at the same time, however, because every single character fights at the same time, but you only draw 5 discs randomly. That means if you have a lot of characters on the field, that means it's a lot harder to draw exactly what you want. But if you only had like 1 or 2 characters, you would be guaranteed to draw their discs quite a lot, and it would be a lot easier for you if those 2 characters were really good. And that is why most players will play with somewhere between 2 and 3 characters on their team. But it is nice to have that sort of flexibility to vary your team size, and being able to just go into a battle with 1 or 2 compared to just 5 being a rather strategic decision is a really interesting fact that I don't really get to see a lot in other mobile games, where in most mobile games you just take everything you have at once and just throw it at the enemy and hope that the enemy dies before you do. Anyway, the important bit in the gameplay is that characters don't specifically have active abilities yet. That comes in a later update called Spirit Enhancement, where every character gets an active ability. And you might be wondering, wait a second, but then how are all the characters different if they don't specifically have an active ability yet? What do they actually do? I mean, they have different stats, sure, they have different types, like elements that you would expect to be super effective against other elements. They have their disc set, but what is the the really important bit about a character is, for the most part, their connect, which is something that is rather special to Magia Record and is how Magia Record sets itself apart from other games in the gameplay sort of terms. And basically the idea is that when a character has used 3 of their attacks at any point in the fight, they don't need to be one after another, just at any point they use a total of 3 attacks over multiple turns. They get what we see down here, where the disc sort of has this arrow on top of it, and this basically means that a character can use a connect. And what a connect does is the really cool thing that I would love other mobile games to do in a similar way, where, for example, right now, well, as you might also expect from something like Fake Ground Order, if a character does 3 discs of their own in the same turn, it's a specific combo that is a lot stronger than if they were from different characters. So we would love to have one character do 3 discs, but as we look at our discs, that is not possible here. However, with Connect, you can take one of your discs if a Connect is ready. As I said, a Connect goes ready if a character has used 3 of their discs at any point during the fight before this, and they can give that disc to someone else. So I can give this disc over to my Jeanne d'Arc, and yes, that is supposed to be the historical Jeanne d'Arc. And what that does is, not only does now Darker get to use this disc, more importantly, it activates their special ability. So I said that the characters don't have active abilities, but they still have an ability. It's just that they cast it when they do a connect. So if we look at our connect right here, for example, we will see that Nanaka is going to give Dark her a disc, and therefore Nanaka is going to cast her connect onto Jeanne d'Arc, which will give a whole bunch of buffs onto her. It will remove enemy debuffs and stuff like that. So it does a whole bunch of stuff, and every character has their own sort of special connect that they do, and that is mostly how characters set themselves apart. I mean, of course, stats and discs and what their ultimate attack is, the Magia, that's their ultimate attack, and some of the other stuff, that's also rather important, but what makes characters really unique is the connect. You still do have active abilities though, however active abilities come from equipment items that I will go over later. So these are actives right here are not actives from that specific character, they're from items that I've given to these characters, and that allows them to use these special abilities. And by stacking a whole bunch of damage modifiers, you can do a whole bunch of damage. And so usually strategy in this game comes down to having the correct combination of characters, loading up their connects, and then trying to get a really nice connect onto the right characters, stacking your active abilities that you get from your items, and if everything goes right, you will just do like 2 or 3 blasts and the enemy will explode. And that is how you play most of this game. So it does require a little bit of strategizing, mostly outside of the fight. I would say most of the strategizing in this game comes from outside of the fight, and then you just see how your team plays out. But even inside of the fight, there are a few things that you need to worry about. So overall, I would say that even though the game is rather simple in that, for example, characters don't have their own active ability yet, and characters don't have really crazy stuff that they can do, it's mostly just you hit enemies, you do a connect, you do a bunch more damage, it's fine. And enemies also don't really do anything super crazy. But even so, it does require a little bit of planning, and so it's the gameplay strength is what I would rank around the midpoint. So if I were to give a rating for the gameplay, maybe like it's better than average. Actually, yeah, it actually is quite a bit better than average usually, because most other mobile games that I've played really are just completely brain dead. You need to at least think a little bit in this game, just a tiny bit at least. So it's like a 6.5 to a 7 out of 10 if I would give it to just the gameplay. However, there's a bunch more to the game. For example, you need to have different characters, of course, and this game works on this basis that you either have a character or you don't have a character. So for example, unlike in Fake Ground Order where you have like 5 of the same character lying around in your box somewhere, once you draw a character, that character then becomes unlocked and you have that character, and if you draw multiple of the same character, you then get a specific item that you can use to make the character stronger, similarly to how it works in Arknights, for example, where if you already have a character and you draw it again, you just get an item that you can use to make the already existing character stronger, and it also means that you can't throw your characters away, you just have them now forever. The selection of characters in this game is rather wide. I only have a few of them, but it is still quite a lot already. Of course, there are different rarities. There's basically just one big distinction between lower rarity characters and higher rarity characters. The highest rarity is natural 4-star, which I'm going to call SSR, and natural 4-stars can be increased in power to the 5-star strength, as we can see on the top here, 5 stars. But lower rarity characters, if you for example look at Rika here, who is canonically lesbian, I'm not kidding, she starts out at 3-star, she's a lower rarity character, and she can be made stronger all the way up to 4-star, but she cannot reach 5-star, she cannot reach the highest level of strength because she is a lower rarity character. So already you might see, oh, if only higher rarity characters can reach 5-star, that means only higher rarity characters matter, right? And with the next bit of information, it sounds even more so, because every character can only equip one item at the start. However, you can give them additional slots, and the items are called Memoria. And you can give them more Memoria slots, up to 4 Memoria slots, if you get dupes of them. So if, for example, I have Kirika right here, if I were to get another Kirika, I would be able to get an item that I could then use to give Kirika another slot, and then she could equip 2 equipment items. That's pretty amazing. And actually, I'm already at 2, so I could give her even 3 or 4 Memoria if I were to get even more dupes of her. And these items cannot be gotten anywhere else. They have to be directly from dupes. It's not like in Azulane, for example, where you can get a billion Boolins to like hang out in your box that you can just use to make your SSRs stronger without having to rely on dupes. So you do need the direct dupe in order to increase their Memoria slots, and Memorias in this game are extremely powerful. Most of a character's strength in battle comes from Memoria. That is, on one hand, really, really awesome, that even if you have a character that isn't that great, since Memoria are so powerful, you can just give them really, really good Memoria and they will be able to be way stronger than characters who are supposed to be better if they have a weaker Memoria. So that also, by the way, leads to the tier list for Magia Record being rather shallow. Like, yeah, there are characters that are very obviously better than other characters, but even the characters that are on the weaker end of the spectrum are rather close to the upper end, and also there is basically no, or like little to no power creep as well. Some of the earliest characters are still top tier on the Japanese server after almost 3 years. And also some of the earliest Memoria that have been released are also still top tier on the Japanese server. So the power creep is very minimal to none at all, so that's really good. However, with everything that I've said right now, it does seem like you kind of have to pay money because you need the highest rated characters because they can reach 5-star, and you need dupes so they can get more Memoria, and you need really good Memoria that also come from the gacha. So it almost seems like, oh, this is not very free-to-play friendly, right? Wrong. It's actually the exact opposite. This game is extremely free-to-play friendly. Why is that? First off, there's a pity system. If you roll 100 times and you didn't get an SSR, you're guaranteed to get an SSR after that. Secondly, on the Japanese server, there's even a secondary pity system where after rolling 300 times on the same gacha, you are guaranteed to get enough of a special resource that you gather, and with this resource you can just buy the rate up character from a shop additionally to your gacha. So after 300 rolls, you just get another rate up character on top of that. Next up, I wasn't quite truthfully to you because there are lower rarity character that can reach 5-star. For example, we have Felicia right here, who starts out as a 2-star even, 2-star character, but can be boosted all the way to 5-star. This doesn't work for every single low rarity character, this only works for some of them, but with future updates, more and more characters are getting granted this uncap, as we call it, where they are then able to reach the highest strength level in the game. So over time, even your lower rarity characters are able to reach the highest levels in the game, which makes them actually rather viable. Of course, they won't have quite the same sort of power that SSRs have, because otherwise SSRs would be useless, but they can still keep up really good in all of the battles. And in fact, just with a handful of good Memoria, even lower rarity characters that have been uncapped to 5-star can beat every single piece of content in this game, and can even allow you to play rather high tier in the PvP mode. That's pretty darn amazing. So you don't even need SSRs to be really, really good in this game. You can just take low rarity characters, boost them all the way to 5-star, and then they're going to win battles for you. More importantly, for lower rarity characters, it's a lot easier to get slots. Not only do they, of course, appear more often in the gacha, but for lower rarity characters, there are other ways of getting their materials to give them more slots. For one, there are some events where you get an item called Destiny Bottle, and Destiny Bottles you can use to give character slots. So just by playing events, you can give character slots, lower rarity characters only. And there's also another item called the Magia chip that you can't really farm, but you just randomly get by just playing the game normally. And you can also trade these in for more slots for your characters. So low rarity characters get all the way to 5-star. They can get 4-slot rather easily with all of that stuff. You already have really, really good characters without even needing to step foot into the gacha. This character right here, Nanaka Tokiwa, is easily the most powerful low rarity character in the entire game, and she's so incredibly powerful that she's stronger than at least half of all SSRs. Think about this, a low rarity character that you just get during maybe your first or second 10 roll. She was even available to just pick up in the event shop for nothing during her personal event, and she's stronger than over half of the SSRs, and she gets level 100, the highest level in the game, and she gets slots very easily. So not only is she stronger than half the SSRs, she's also easier to get to 4-slot than every single other character in the game, or at least SSR wise. So at this point you rightfully notice, wait a second, this is actually very free-to-play friendly. If low rarity characters really can play to such a high level, then this game is actually rather free-to-play friendly. Sounds pretty nice, right? We will still have a quick look at the gacha. Gacha takes your Magia stones that you get up there. I can maybe quickly show you the prizes. Prices don't really matter. I play everything free to play anyway, and as I told you before, or just right now, the game is rather free to play friendly. So we're going to take a quick look at the gacha, some special stuff right there. So you can do 10 draws and you can do 1 draws. 10 draws have better rates, as you would expect, and 10 draws are guaranteed to give you at least 1 magic wheel, I think. So yeah, you have this in-game details screen that shows you exactly all the rates for everything, what the rate up rates are, what the Memoria rates are, rates between all the different magic girls and Memoria and their rarities. As you can see, 1% SSR rate on a normal roll, but if you do a 10 roll, then one of those rolls is guaranteed to be 3-star or better, and for that 3-star or better roll, the SSR rate is actually 2%. So if you do a 10 roll, 9 of those rolls will be 1%, and one of those rolls will be 2% to get an SSR character, which is pretty alright if you take into consideration that you do get free rolls and premium currency rather quickly in this game. It's not nearly as quickly as you do, for example, in Azulane or in Ghost Frontline, how many tickets I have lying around, but it still is a lot faster than in Fake Ground Order, for example, where you play for like 3 months and you get just a handful of 10 rolls. So it is actually rather nice that you don't get stuff too fast, but you still have to work for it a little bit. You still have to stick around for a little bit, but you will be rewarded with quite a lot of rolls. And like I said, there is the pity, the guaranteed 4-star magical girl, if you roll 100 times without getting an SSR until then. And on the Japanese server, if you roll 300 times, you also get the 4-star character on top of that. And there's a whole bunch of stuff that you see down here to give you more information. So the game is very upfront about everything that it has. So with everything that we've seen so far, like I said, it's rather free-to-play friendly. But what about the PvP mode? Certainly the PvP mode is so hard that you need to be paying in order to actually have a good chance, right? So look at the PvP mode, which is called Mirrors. There's 2 Mirrors modes. There's the ranking, which is only available for like about 1 week, 3 times a year. So very, very rarely this thing is even available. And all Mirrors ranking does is it's the very same Mirrors game mode, just that at the end of this you receive a ranking, and you might think to yourself, oh, certainly having a higher rank is going to give me more rewards. No, the ranking reward that you get from this is only for prestige. You don't actually get more rewards or special rewards other than prestige. So right away, the ranking mode doesn't matter for rewards. Everyone gets the same rewards if you just play and get a handful of wins, but you can like cheat your way into wins by specifically only fighting weak enemies. So when you go into the Mirrors game mode, you will then be presented with a selection of characters, and you have your BP down here, which is how often you get to play your mirrors mode, but you get a whole bunch of BP potions that I've never even touched, and you don't really want to do that many mirrors anyway. So you have plenty of BP in order to fight enemies, and you can even use a BP to refresh opponents if you don't like your opponents. And what you can simply do is you can just specifically pick out weak opponents and fight only weak opponents. So I'm going to go into a battle that's should be rather easy right here. And also, very important bit about PvP, it's not actually PvP like real time. It's still the very same PvE style gameplay where the enemy is just AI controlled and you always get first turn. So not only is enemy AI controlled, you also get first turn, and Mirrors uses a special AI preset that makes AI rather abusable in some cases as well. So there's many ways on how the game is stacked in your favor. You get to choose opponent, and the AI makes the entire thing a lot easier with you always getting first turn. And since Mirrors battle usually lasts like 2 to 3 turns, getting first turn is pretty darn powerful. So we can just slam right in here and do some massive damage to their team before they even get to do anything. And with everything I've said earlier, with how good some free-to-play characters are, and with how good some Memoria you can just randomly get from the gacha, it's very, I'm gonna say, not very possible for everyone, but if you do stick around and play the game for like a little bit, for like let's say 2 months or so, you can probably fight against even the biggest whale teams and win, which is absolutely absurd. Like my win rate, like I said, I'm free to play. My win rate against the highest tier whale teams is probably like 80%, which is absolutely ridiculous if you think that they're like whales that have spent like tens of thousands of dollars and I'm free to play and I'm still keeping up with them. And even during the ranking, I showed you earlier, my ranking was S rank, which is the highest you can get in the game. So of course you can get to S3, which is a little bit better. But even so, I'm in the highest like ranking that you can get. So that's even more free-to-play friendly. How is this game even more free-to-play friendly in all of these ways? So not only is the gacha free-to-play friendly because low-rarity characters can just beat everything, PvE content is also rather free-to-play friendly because low-rarity characters can just beat everything. Mirrors is free-to-play friendly because not only do you not need to perform specifically well, because everything you get from PvP is just a bunch of currency you can use in a shop, and that shop doesn't have that much important stuff in it, and you also get some currency if you lose. So you don't even need to be good in the PvP, and the PvP is stacked in your favor. So there's so many ways on how this game is free-to-play friendly, and at this point it might seem really awesome that this is indeed the case. However, I'm going to make a case that is actually quite a problem when you think about Magia Record as a product. A product needs to make money. But on another hand, if you are willing to pay for a product, you want to get something for it. Not only are the rates, by the way, that you get for buying Magia Stones rather bad. Actually, it takes quite a lot of money to get even just a handful of Magia Stones. So not only are the rates bad, like I said, the game is so free-to-play friendly, you don't need to actually roll the gacha to beat everything in the game. So why even pay money for the game? I have made a video specifically about this. It's called Magia Record has terrible return for your money or something like that. If you pop that into YouTube, you should get it. You should find it. And this is actually quite a problem, not just that the game makes a lot less money than it otherwise could, but also if you are willing to spend money on the game, you kind of feel cheated. Everyone says that the monetization in this game is rather bad, and that's just because, like I said, it's too free-to-play friendly and doesn't give you anything for having paid money. Of course, there are other games like Azulane or Girls Frontline who are extremely free-to-play friendly, where you can beat everything. Like in both of those games I was able to beat everything, and in Azulane I was doing really well in PvP too, shoutouts to Enterprise, without having paid a single cent. I had almost every single SSR in Azulane and in Girls Frontline, so it's really friendly in that way as well. But both of those gachas still make tons of money, and not just they make money in the sense that the developer is happy about it, but also they make a lot of money in the sense that people like to play it, but like to spend money in that game. They're happy about spending money in those games. Why? Because you get you can have lolis that are scantily clad, or you can get big titty yandere girls as skins that you can pay for, and this game doesn't have that. This game does not have cosmetics, and that might be a turnoff for people to know that if they want to spend money for the game, the only way you can spend money is to go into the gacha, which is not even necessary for free-to-play. So this is basically the main part that I wanted to go on about this game. If you go into the story is... I know I keep saying a lot of really bad things about the story, but it's only because I'm someone who really valued the in-depth storytelling and the complex themes and everything that were masterfully explored during Madoka Magica, the original anime. None of that is in here. If you are looking for anything that is similarly to the original tone of Madoka Magica, this is not it. This plays out more than a rather more standard Magical Girl story. If you think something like Precure or like Nanohas, for example, like more standard kind of style Magical Girls, this is somewhat like that. So if you really loved Madoka Magica for being so special and so different to all Magical Girl stories, Magia Record might not be for you, at least the story, because it's very much rather similar to that. However, it's not quite as friendly, it's not quite as pink as the regular Magical Girl stories. So it's still different than most Magical Girl stories in that it is more mature, but it's still very much in the same ballpark and doesn't go anywhere near what Madoka Magica did, which is really, really sad. However, if you don't really care for that it is that the tone is a lot more wholesome and more towards the more standard stuff, if you don't care for that, then it's totally fine. It's a completely serviceable and rather entertaining story, I would say. But if you care for quality, if you care for depth, complexity, the really, really mature and dark tone, you will not really find anything like that here. So this is rather a big letdown, so the story is maybe not for you if you care for that. The characters, I will say there are some characters, most notably here, for example, Ren, who is a really awesome character who would fit right in with the original Madoka Magica cast, because she's as a character with a rather dark backstory, who was confronted with death multiple times, so it kind of does fit in with the rest of the cast and a handful of other characters like that as well. But there are also plenty of characters that are just like joke characters, not really joke characters, but like characters that are just there for comedic relief. They're characters that are just always happy and wholesome and nothing bad ever happens to them out there. The characters like that as well. There are also events, and about the events is that there's basically always an event running, and I'm not talking about like Girls Frontline where a fucking discount counts as an event, but like an actual gameplay event where you have specific event currency to farm. And I know some people will be put off by this, that there's always an event that you need to farm, but on the other hand, the rewards for farming events aren't that amazing that you need to keep doing it. Of course, when you start out the game, you might want to farm a lot, but you don't really need to. You can just take summoning tickets, free tickets. You can take some of the most important materials for awakening, like upgrading your girls, and then just move on. You don't really need to farm all day on this, so farming is rather nice. There's also auto battle in this game that is activated after beating a stage once. And auto battle makes everything really nice. Some specific story nodes even have auto battle active for the very first time you go into the stage, and auto battle is not always the best, but at least somewhat decent, and will make sure that if you can trivially beat a stage, you can do it. I know some people might also not really like auto battle, but here's the thing. If you're playing other mobile games where even if you randomly tap any button on the screen and you still cannot possibly lose the stage, what point is there in sitting there for 2 minutes staring at your screen, tapping the screen until you win? I mean, yeah, but that's a whole different topic. That's a whole different topic to go in with auto battle, yes or no. Personally, I think that if a stage is trivial, then yes, auto battle. If a stage is non-trivial, then no auto battle. Anyway, so there's always an event going on. Because as I mentioned earlier, you have other games like Girls Frontline where you might go like an entire month without a gameplay event, and just an event where it's like, here's new skins for you to buy. And that counts as an event for like 2 weeks straight. Awesome. So what do you even do? You log in, do dailies. That said, like I said, the events aren't so focused on farming that you always are going to log into the game and play the game for multiple hours. If you have a bunch of like 2 or 3 characters that you have maxed out, then there's not really too much incentive for you to like hardcore farm everything. You just log in, you do some dailies, you read new stories that have come out for whatever, you do your dailies in the event as well to gather a bunch more materials, to get a bunch more stuff, and then you just move on for the game. It's not a game that you sit down and play hours every day, but it is a game that is very nice to just come back to every day and just do a bunch of matches and then do other stuff. It's a mobile game. Mobile games aren't made to be played for 10 hours straight. And in that sense, it is doing that job rather well. So overall, it is a game that is rather decent in the gameplay, a bit better than average in the gameplay that I would say. It's extremely free-to-play friendly, but on the flip side, it's so free-to-play friendly that if you want to spend money on the game, there's not really any good place to spend money, sadly. There's one thing I need to mention about the gameplay complexity, in that, as I mentioned, it is not quite that complex. In theory, I know all of the different details of the gameplay mechanics. The gameplay mechanics of the game have a lot of potential depth that they could be used for, but the developers always play it really safe. I know there's a bunch of stuff that is programmed in the game that can do some absolutely crazy stuff, but they don't really use that anywhere on character abilities or on enemy abilities. So they programmed a whole bunch of stuff that you only see like once in the entire game that makes for a really awesome stage, and you think to yourself, that was a really awesome stage. It's really cool how all these different abilities, actives and passives interacted with each other, how the the grid spaces all made sense, how you had to specifically plan for specific things, take specific memoria into battle with you. That actually feels like you really need to work a lot, but then you only see that like once in like 2 or 3 months, and you think to yourself, why are you not doing this more often? However, on the Japanese server, they have been doing a lot more like this lately with the EX quests, which are so incredibly goddamn difficult, and they all actually do use the mechanics a lot better. So I will say that the game, if it continues like it is going on the Japanese server, the game is at least going to make more of an effort in the future to actually make use of all of that potential. Like, this combat system has more potential depth than Fake on Order by a long shot. However, Fake on Order developers are a lot better at actually using every single piece of depth that they have for a compelling combat, while in this game the developer plays it way too safe in a lot of combats. Like, most enemies are just, I hit hard and have a lot of health, and that's all they do, and then they buff themselves so they hit harder and are harder to kill, but they don't really do anything special, so that kind of sucks. So yeah, overall, I really like this game. I would recommend it to you if you just want a rather comfy game, I would say, where you don't need to worry about spending money, that you want to just play free to play, just read some stories here and there. But if you expect too much depth or complexity in either the gameplay or the story, you might be a bit disappointed. And that is basically that. If you have anything to add or any question, leave a comment below. And if you like this video, hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you guys next time.